Worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yard as a pipe fitter. That I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here it is here. Pagoda is next to Hackensack.
Pagoda?
Pagoda, like in Colombia.
Bogota. Yeah.
Well, they call it Bogota there. In New Jersey, they call it Pagoda.
And who worked there?
My father worked in Pagoda in the candy store
Of
probably it was Sidney's father, Rogoff.
Sam.
Sam. Joe Rogoff remembers him because of the name. He had the name Rogoff.
But outside of the name,
Sidney's, the dentist, his father's name was Rogoff.
Sam.
And so Sidney, so the dentist's name was Rogoff too.
But but how does that connect to the Rogovins?
What was Sam
Because it
to
was
your
my-
family?
Because it was my father's uncle or
Cousin?
cousin. That's what it says there. Joe Rogoff remembers him as a cousin. Rogoff was a
But it can't be
dentist.
your father's uncle, because if you think about it, we don't know of any Jacobs, either Jacob or Sarah's siblings. I shouldn't say it can't be, but I actually do know of some that a sibling he might well have had according to one census, but we don't know of any connection here. We can't figure it out. Any facts that you can remember about Sam or Sidney?
Sidney was the son of Sam. Son of Sam.
Right, son of Sam.
His name must have been Berkowitz.
Did you question Reva?
Yes, and I'll tell you about that conversation in a bit. But
Where does she live?
I'll tell you in a bit. I want you to try to remember anything at all, or about their personalities, what kind of people they were. Did you ever meet them, Sam or Sidney? You only just heard about them growing
Used
up.
to drop you off.
I used to use my tattoo.
He did braces for you or something?
No, he did regular dentistry.
Okay.
I would go to him.
And the father, I don't remember. No, I do not remember any meeting with either one of them. All I know is that my father went to the wedding, Sidney's wedding in Middletown, Connecticut.
You
He must have
know
taken
more
a bus
about it
up.
because
He
you're
must have taken a
a
Greyhound
lot
bus
older
up to
than I am.
Middletown. A lot older? How much older?
6 years.
Is that fact?
Yeah.
I'm 75.
I know. I know very well. I haven't even hit the
I don't
big
think
7-0
I don't
yet.
think that's funny.
Okay, so anyway, you don't have any other information about Sam, Sidney, or what connection there might be
All
outside
I
of the
know
name.
is whether he was the same uncle or cousin or something who had the candy store in Pagoda, New Jersey, and then maybe he moved, bought another candy store in Nutley. If it's the same one, I don't know. But Lena was married to Sam, who owned a candy store in
It's
Nutley.
And do you remember anything about Lena at all?
No.
Okay.
Memory of Tanta Connecticut was that she was Aunt Bessie's sister, and when we went to visit Aunt Bessie, occasionally she was there, and that's all I know. I did hear a story that she did have it in the jewelry business or something like that, possibly. And of course, when we went to visit in those early days, Aunt Bessie and Mr. Cohn in Taunton, Connecticut, in the back room was the old man with the long white beard, Litman Smolensky, who lived to a ripe old age, but he was always in bed. He must have been in his 90s at that point already, you know. So I really don't know anything more about Tanta Connecticut.
Do you have any impression of her personality or your?
None. Because if they spoke to me, they spoke with an accent, and I was young and I really didn't understand it. To this day, when people with accents, not necessarily Yiddish, I don't understand it well.
Any memories of her death?
None
When she was
whatsoever.
done. Mother?
Never.
No.
Because don't forget, I was younger
Right.
than Charlie.
We went there on Hanukkah sometimes to visit, and they always had, gave us Hanukkah gelt, which might have been a quarter. And they had raisins and fruit and nuts, things like this. This is my only memory
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Okay.
And of course, eventually, Uncle Israel and Aunt Molly moved into that house on Jackson Street and lived.
Oh, really? 126 Jackson?
Yeah, they lived there, and with Aunt Bessie, it was Aunt Bessie's house, I believe,
Was that before they went back to
before they went
Israel?
back to Israel. Yeah, he had his architect's shingle on the outside
Hmm.
of the house. This would have been before he went back to Israel.
Tell me about Sydney.
I don't want to tell you about Sydney.
What are you concerned about by
I'm
telling
not
me?
concerned about him.
Then why aren't you telling me anything?
Who is Sydney?
Because
Sydney Lerman.
Oh, Sydney
Thi-
Lerman. Oh,
Charles could
I
tell
had
you
the-
more
I had
about
the
Sydney
best.
Lerman than I ever.
I will not say a word about Sydney Lerman. One day, it'll come back at me.
Was he the gambler?
Gambler?
Yeah, did
Oh,
gamble.
he played poker a lot. You're trying to draw me out, but you can't do it. We had a bad relationship in the end, through no fault of my own, I don't
course.
think.
That goes without saying.
I went-
Was it just you and him, or him and other people too?
No, his mother, of course, Aunt Sarah, his wife, Aunt Sarah, was very good to me. They were very good to me. And Uncle Sidney took me through my mother's efforts to work in his studio, or learn in his studio, you know. And we had a couple of things that happened, mistakes that I made, you know, and which was probably very costly to him, his reputation and so forth, but
Or did he cause it himself?
no, he had his own things. I wouldn't want his children ever to hear this, so.
We can keep this confidential.
Yeah. It's like L.A. Confidential. Did you see that movie?
Yes.
That was good.
Absolutely.
So-
I like that.
No, we saw, yeah.
What happened? You had a falling out.
We
with
had
him.
we had a falling out, and
Bad
I
name
went to
is-
work.
Hold on. Mom, hold on a second, please.
Excuse me.
We had a falling out, and I went to work for his arch enemy, Erwin Ravison, who worked for Uncle Sidney at one time before he went in the army, and then after, and we became very friendly. And after this falling out, I went to work for his arch enemy. Any competitor was considered an arch enemy, you know, things like that. But
You wanna lie down, Joyce?
I wouldn't want to say anything else about that.
But because of that falling out,
Just my
things
freaking
were never the
thumb
same.
all the time.
Things never became reconciled between the two of you.
That one.
No, I went to his funeral. That was a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
But when he was alive, things were never reconciled.
No. I would have to, most of it probably was my fault due to technical errors in the photographic line, I would say. I remember a couple of them.
You made some mistakes.
Yes, I made
But don't
mistakes.
we all?
Because
But that's the nature of being an
reason-
apprentice.
Because I was human and I made some mistakes. And they were not good.
Mistakes generally aren't.
Anyway, we had a falling out and that was it. And we
Did you
never-
decide to leave, or did he say you're out of here? Or was it a mutual?
No, I think I just left like that. I appreciated that he allowed me to learn part of whatever I was going to do the rest of my life in his studio, you know. I wasn't paid for it or anything, but I hung around and so forth. And I can't discuss anything else beyond that. Shut off that machine and I could tell you a few things.
Say this again. Aunt Sarah.
Aunt Sarah was the most popular.
She was in the
girl
paper?
In the newspaper.
Anybody have an article, a copy of that article?
I don't know.
Or you know what year it
I
was?
don't know. Maybe Betty.
Maybe Betty.
Maybe Betty knows.
Were there other articles in the paper about her? Or was that the only one?
No, but there was always something about part of that family. You know, they were do-gooders and belonged to these organizations. I mean, look at Aunt Becky. They didn't have a good life, an early life.
Who?
They struggled early in life.
Why did they
Because
struggle?
my mother brought them up,
Oh, that early.
and with you know, Aunt Bessie floating around somewhere doing whatever she did.
Is that what you remember about Aunt Bessie? What are your memories of Aunt Bessie?
You would remember too much of it. You remember
You're the older
Aunt
one. Why wouldn't you remember more about it? I mean, I know you weren't there
Nuts-
much, but
nuts
before you
and-
left.
Nuts and raisins. And Tata Connect, that's all I remember.
You don't remember
And the
your-
old man, Litman Smolenski.
So you don't remember Aunt Bessie?
Do I remember? Yeah, of course I remember.
What do you remember about Aunt Bessie?
That she lived on Jackson Street. And we went to visit her.
And they spoke Yiddish.
And what kind of person was she? What kind of personality did she have? Was she warm or cold, distant?
She was warm. She
Curious?
called me Charlie.
Uh-huh. And what else? Anything else that you remember?
I don't think she had children.
No.
Did she?
No.
No, there's nothing else. Like I say, she was a nice lady, and my mother was
Aunt Molly. She
always
kept
spoke
Aunt
well
Molly.
of her.
Lived with her.
When you aim that thing, I mean, you don't have me in the center. I mean, I can see your eye isn't up to the eyepiece, so
He doesn't care
are you
about.
just doing the audio part you're interested in? Or?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You want to believe that one?
He'll.
See, you do this most of the
Should
times I
pull
do
my
this.
Hair or anything?
Yeah, get a hairnet
I mean,
on.
not even, this is not my real hair, this is a earpiece, actually.
Okay.
Right. Between you and him. Right.
Bill gets too bushy, you know, I didn't.
I'm gonna comb my eyebrows back a little bit.
So you really have no other memories of Aunt Bessie besides that?
Why do you keep saying, why you dwell on Aunt Bessie?
Because no one else can remember her. You're the oldest one left.
No, the only
Oh,
one that.
the oldest one was Richard, may he rest in peace.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're the only one left that's this old that remembers her.
You know something? I never looked at it that way. I am the oldest of the cousins.
So that's why you have a special responsibility to bear the memories
Special responsibility.
and express them.
What about Shoshana? Would she have remembered anything?
Yeah.
Did she live with them?
Yeah, but she was a...
They
She
lived
does,
in the back of
and she
the
has, and she
store.
has many memories, some of which she shared with me by email. But you're right here in person. I can't get Shu on camera. I can get you on camera.
Why
So,
can't you get her on camera?
because she doesn't live here, in case you didn't realize that.
I know that. She lives was in Beersheba.
And since I'm not going to Israel in the next year or two, I need to rely on people like you who have a special responsibility.
You sound like my daughter, a special responsibility. No, she was a woman, sort of, her face was like my mother's, to a certain
Round,
degree, roundish,
glasses, nice cheeks.
red,
Yeah.
slightly red, and since no one else that you're going to be speaking to really remembers Aunt Bessie, isn't my daughter Beth was named after Aunt Bessie.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And Tanta Betsy, what was her name?
Betya? Betya?
Beth's name was, her last name was,
Levine. Well, I mean, no, but I'm.
No, my daughter's last name, because I think she changed her
Her
name.
Hebrew name.
Her
Her
name
Hebrew
was changed when you
Yeah.
become ill, and taken a different name.
She changed her name?
No, but
Or
she gave
first
herself a Hebrew name.
Her Hebrew
Because
name.
we never had given her a Hebrew
Really?
name. And we didn't know what Bessie's Hebrew name was.
Oh, it's on a gravestone. On Aunt Bessie's
Oh,
gravestone.
really?
And that's in Lodi, that
Yeah.
cemetery?
Yep.
And that's where
Littman, she's right near Littman.
Yeah.
Is
Can
that
you
where
get
my-
into that place or?
You have to talk to George Garrison. He,
Oh, right, that's right. You have
the
to
Burial
have
Society
somebody to
guy.
get you over the wall.
yeah. I did go over the wall several times.
I don't doubt it.
That's the only way I could get in. But
Do they take care of that? I mean, it's
it is. It's
cut,
it's a
we
beautiful cemetery. I mean, it's not like the classic.
Do not get cremated. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Until recent
Put them in
times,
the
what
ground.
happened in recent times?
They are getting cremated.
I mean, because
I see them
Well, they're not the only
advertisements
ones.
down here.
Yeah,
I see advertisements down here for
they put them in
cremation
niches in the wall, they don't
for
bury them.
Jewish people, which is not a Jewish custom, except the people who
The secular.
or disappeared in the Holocaust in the furnaces. I don't know, they may have a special dispensation because their
Called
bodies
involuntary
were burned up. Anyway, you can speak to a higher authority than myself about that. That's my understanding,
Is that Jews should not be cremated.
correct. But you may speak to a Reformed rabbi or even maybe a conservative one. They may tell you another story, but according to Orthodox.
And Aunt Bessie, I think, had an Orthodox
They
funeral.
all did.
Yeah, they were brought up.
No,
that
they
way.
weren't. Your parents certainly didn't.
My mother was
She
always
kept
kosher.
kosher.
She did not have an Orthodox funeral.
Oh, no.
That's what
No,
I'm saying.
She wasn't Orthodox. She sat on her swing downstairs
And she read
and
her
read the
on
Bible.
holidays.
And that was...
Your mother
Yes.
read the Bible?
Yes.
She always would read
She had a little white Bible,
Yeah,
remember?
right. Sure.
Where is that Bible?
Where
What
is
did you
that
do
Bible?
with
Oh,
it?
now I'm going to be the
What
one
did you
that
do
doesn't...
with it, huh?
It's somewhere. I don't know
The
where.
candlesticks
That's
you
the one you
got,
threw out.
right?
Hmm?
Isn't that the one you threw out?
You just try to start everything.
The brass candlesticks you have, right?
Brass? No, I don't have those candles.
Where are they?
I don't
She
know.
lit the candles every Shabbos.
Yes, she did.
I had no
Very
idea.
polishing
There's
them.
nothing to indicate that she
Here
was
comes
religious.
somebody. You got a visitor. I
Delivery.
was saying that one day when I was in Brooklyn, visiting my grandmother, Sarah, her name was.
Sarah Rogovin Friedman.
Yeah, her name was Friedman, I don't remember
Yeah.
that. Okay, Friedman. When I was visiting her, she asked me to go downstairs and get her mail. So I went down to the mailbox, and on the mailbox, the number that she gave me was her name, but also was the name Applebaum. And so I never found out who Applebaum was, or whether that was their original name. I don't know how it got to be Rogovin, but anyway, my grandfather's name was what? Was it Jacob? Okay, Yaakov Rogovin. Okay. And I only saw him once in my life. He came to Kearney to visit his son, my father, Harry. Svi. His name was Svi. My father's
Oh, really?
Hebrew name was Svi.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because when you
That makes sense. Your grandfather's, Harris Smolensky, was Svizotic.
that's true. And my father's name, though, Harry
Oh.
McGowan, his Hebrew name was Svi, and the only reason I know that is because went somewhere and he had an aliyah, bar mitzvah, in your family or some other family, and he had to give his Hebrew name, and it was Tzvi, and then I saw it on a piece of paper somewhere else, maybe it's on a death certificate or something like that. I'm not sure. I always thought his name was Herschel, but and I always used to give the name Herschel. Of course, you're supposed to give your father's name. So it turns out his name was Tzvi. So I'm Sadik Beryl Ben Tzvi. That's me, the son of Tzvi. Okay? Well, that's all I know. And what does this got to do with Applebaum? I'm not sure. Did you come across this name, Applebaum, anywhere?
No.
You didn't?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay, so
What other stories do you remember of your grandmother? Mom, you were telling a story of how you remember, you thought that there were pictures there of their grandparents. Do you have any memories of pictures on the wall of their grandparents, of Sarah or Jacob's?
in my grandmother's house, I know there was a big, old, sepia tone print of my father when he was in the army.
Yeah, I think we.
Right, we have that.
A big one they
Yeah.
had in a frame there, which we don't have that picture, that particular picture.
I can give you a copy if you want
Oh,
one.
wait, no, I have copies of it.
Okay.
I do have copies of it. And standing by a table with a flag on
Right.
it, yeah, that's the same print. Of course, he had a negative made from that print, and that's why it was in that bunch of junk
Across
that we had.
For God's sake, the windows.
I thought you was still.
So I don't remember who else. There might have been a picture of my grandmother, or maybe it was somebody in her family hanging in that room. It was a small apartment, you know, and my uncle Abe lived there also.
So she lived with your Uncle Abe before she went into the nursing home?
She lived with us in Kearney for a period of time, and then she went into the nursing home in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. That I remember. We used to go and visit her. The year would have been 1948 or 49, because I remember I drove there in my first automobile, which was a Chevrolet convertible, and they didn't have an automobile all those years because my father had the store, and we always lived within a block of the store. In the end, he did get a car. I sold him my 1949 Hudson, which was the first step-down type of car where you step down instead of up into a car. Like today's SUVs, you step up, they have running boards and so forth. Well, this Hudson, you step down into like the current cars today. And then he was driving that for a while, and then he bought a Chevrolet, a blue Chevrolet, and he had probably a couple of minor accidents, and he stopped. That's when they lived in Belleville, and he stopped driving after that. That was the end of his driving days.
Oh, I think it was Selma who had an accident too.
She had one.
The minute
with-
she had that, that was the end of her
She
driving
had that
life.
with Uncle Sam's Buick.
Yeah, well, I always remember it.
She lived with Aunt Becky. So, I mean, all these stories, if whatever you're recording won't mean beans to any grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so forth, because they don't know the people. you know.
Well, we'll see how they feel about it.
Right.
You don't get to decide how they feel about it, but you certainly get to tell the stories, and they will appreciate it, whether you know it or not.
I don't know, I mean, I'd have to.
And it's my job to find out more about these people, which is what I'm doing, and I will share that information in a minute, but I first want to hear it. So it sounds like you're saying you don't remember any other pictures in the apartment.
I do remember, now that you bring it up, there were some pictures hanging up, large ones, like 16 by 20 ovals, you know, hanging on the wall in her dining room, which was very tiny. And that's all I remember. Who has those pictures? I don't know.
Who do you think would have inherited
Well,
them?
it would have been, the children were my uncle Abe, who was single until he got married at the age of maybe 45 or so. I thought he was an
So your
old
cousin
guy.
George might have them.
Uncle George might have them, or Aunt Mary might have them.
Not your Uncle George, but George, Abe's son.
Abe's
Abe
son.
never had.
His
Abe-
adopted son.
Oh, his adopted son.
Right. Who I've been in
Married
contact with.
Kriegsman.
Yes.
Married a woman by the
Ethel.
name of
You think he
Ethel.
would have
Yeah,
wanted to
Ethel,
keep
I always
James,
remember.
he was a well-known photographer in New York City, James J. Kriegsman. He did photographs of all the stars, and then he had a plant, because I got a job for about 30 seconds with him. I went up there because my uncle was able to, you know, pull some strings, and I went up there and was supposed to do some darkroom work, and they give you 400 prints to develop at one time in a tray, and I said, this is not for me. So I never really took the job, and
So it's possible
her
that
name
George.
was Ethel, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So George might have some of those.
George is dead.
No, no, not your Uncle George, your cousin George, who's an adopted son of Abe
Oh.
Oh.
and Ethel. Well,
I don't know what his name was. It wasn't George.
George,
His name, I don't think, was George.
I have all this on my computer, and I can tell you in a moment.
He was a young a boy in his teens, maybe, or even younger when they got married.
Mm-hmm.
And
I might be
I don't
mistaken by his
remember
name.
what his name was, but if he was an adopted,
He was Ethel's son,
yes,
actually.
but he was adopted by my uncle.
Right.
I didn't know that.
But I've been in touch with him because
really?
he's done a lot of research. Because
Why would he be that?
because he was
Because
doing the yard site, and so he needed to know a lot more about Jacob, and he found out a lot of information about him, which I'll share in just a bit. But first, I want to get more details out of you about if you remember anything about those photos.
No, I don't.
Okay, all right. Now you mentioned your one memory of Jacob, your grandfather.
Yes, came to visit my father in his candy store, and it wasn't shortly after that he died. So I only remember seeing him once. I had a picture of him. I think he had a mustache. I think he was a tailor, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have his wedding picture also.
Oh, okay. Where did this come from? These pictures.
Your cousin Joel,
Oh,
and I'd be happy to show it to you, and you can get a copy of it if you'd like.
may he rest in peace.
Yeah. I didn't
Joel
realize
and
he had
his
that.
wife also went.
They both died.
You know,
Both died.
right.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your grandfather, what did you have any impressions at all of him? Any memories of what kind of person he was like?
No, because I don't remember what age I was. I wasn't too old.
It was 19. He died in 1936.
Oh my goodness, I was only born in 1927.
Right. So I'm really surprised you remember him.
Well, I did see him once.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandmother, we did see because my father used to visit her and he used to take me.
I'm sorry. He died in 1932, not 36. So you must have been 3 or 4 years old.
No, I had to be older to remember.
He died in 1932. I'm quite sure.
You better check the records.
I will.
Month?
But trust me on this.
So you were 5
In
years old.
1932, my father didn't even have the store. I think the story he had was in like in 1933 or so, during
Okay.
her life.
What is that?
Of course, it wasn't kosher. We
You
had
found it?
Yeah.
Really?
Passover dishes, we had Beltic and Fleshik dishes.
Yeah.
So to the very end, she kept kosher?
Yes.
She always saying she had barrels of dishes. When it was Passover, she would put all the dishes in a
Don't
barrel.
forget, she was brought up traditional Orthodox
By Bessie.
by anybody in the family.
Well, no, but there would
They
have
all
to be.
drifted later.
Well,
the uncles
Bessie
of-
would look after, the family and see that everything was going all right.
But who raised her?
Aunt
When you're
Bessie?
saying she was raised in an Orthodox way, who raised her?
Well,
Aunt Bessie.
Aunt Bessie
Bessie.
was there,
Who was Orthodox?
who had her own
Yes,
businesses.
all those people were Orthodox that came over, and some of them lost their faith later on.
Well, I think a lot of them probably
They
did.
knew how to. They knew they had to work on Saturday, because otherwise they wouldn't have their jobs, and they drifted away, and so forth. And most of those people came from shtetls and places like that in Europe, were brought up that way,
My understanding is the Pinks were not very religious, with the exception of your Uncle Reuben and Aunt Esther. There wasn't a lot of.
Yeah, but when they came, these were American Jews, right? Their parents were.
Well, no, even some of those who came over
But
were not.
some of them drifted away, and
It's like every country where Irish drift
there
away.
is a book by
Scotland.
Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz,
Mhm.
the Harvard lawyer.
Right?
It's called The Vanishing American Jew. It's a very interesting book to read. Even he was brought up
Orthodox.
Orthodox, went to yeshiva until a certain age, and his son intermarried. And he writes a story about the vanishing American Jew, how in another generation or so, there'll be very few Jews left except Orthodox Jews who keep the faith, It's an interesting book if you ever get a chance to read it.
Okay. You remember him on the corner?
On the corner of Quincy and Davis Avenue in front of the store. That's all I remember about him.
You remember what he looked like?
Yes. You look like the picture. You look like the latest picture that I have of him somewhere at home in an envelope marked Harry Rigovan.
1932.
Died in
30
Before I was
two.
born.
I would say it would be.
March 8th, if to be exact.
How about maybe there's a mistake there?
No,
No.
sorry. I mean, unless the gravestone and his death certificate were wrong, which is highly unlikely, he died in 1932.
And where is he buried?
In Mount Zion, because I visited his grave. Mount Zion Cemetery in Massapeth.
Who? Master?
Massapeth. It's on.
Long Island.
Long Island.
Oh.
Yeah. It's more like in the Bronx. I could tell you, but
Oh, that's all right.
anyway.
I am not making any visits there.
And Sarah is there also. Your grandmother. They're both there together, along with some other Rigovans.
Really?
Yes.
What other-
Rigovans nobody has ever heard of.
Mhm.
So-
Spelled R-A-G or
Yes.
R-O-G?
Is
R.A.G.
George there?
No, oh, I was going to check him.
My A-G and his brother, Joel's
Bill,
father,
yeah.
called himself
Bill
Rogoff.
Yeah.
Mo Rogoff, his name was, really, not Bill, but.
Right. His World War I draft card has him down as Mo.
He's got a draft card, but I don't think he was in the army.
From World War I. These weren't people who necessarily were in the army, but
Yeah,
they had
right,
to
They had to
sign.
register for the draft.
You were right. His name is not George. Your cousin's name is Gary.
That's it, Gary.
Yeah.
That I remember.
There, now that's.
Yeah.
Now I remember.
Now.
Gary,
Okay.
I do remember.
And it's Gary who I've been corresponding with.
Okay, where does he live?
California.
Is he married?
Wait a minute, you know something?
He just got married.
Wait a minute. You say California. Isn't that where my other cousin, my uncle,
Which uncle is this?
uh,
Bill.
okay, I had a uncle in Nutley who was a dentist.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he wasn't an uncle, but go ahead. We're going
Okay,
to come back to
cousin.
him in a moment.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, my father, okay, let's see.
Your father's brother.
No. It was his uncle had a candy store in Nutley.
Sam.
Sam, and the dentist lived above, had his office above the store.
Sydney.
Remember? Sydney. And he married a woman from
Riva.
Riva.
Who's
from
down here.
Middletown,
Who
Connecticut.
lives here?
She now lives here.
She
Oh,
lived
they live here?
Yes.
Where?
She does.
Where's
He
here?
passed away.
I can tell you in a minute. I'll come back to that. But go ahead. I want to hear about the
So-
Rogoff name.
So his name was Rogoff. It was his uncle, I believe, and his name was Rogoff. So there's two Rogoffs, Bill or Mo Rogoff, and the man who owned the candy store in Nutley, whose son became a dentist, who married the girl from Middletown, Connecticut.
But why did Bill change his name from Rogovin to Rogoff?
I don't know. Maybe it sounded too Jewish. I don't know.
Rogoff doesn't?
I don't know what it sounds like.
Maybe it was easier to spell.
There's somebody I know, a man who used to take care of my lawn, had one of those lawn services, and he was from France originally, and he told me that my name was French.
Right. Okay. I've heard that story, but I'm really
You
interested in the Rogoff story. And so you have no idea why Bill changed his name to Rogoff.
Yeah. In those days, we didn't have what you're doing. We had no way of knowing. We didn't ask too many questions when we were younger.
But
So we
something
don't know
in
these things.
yeah, something inspired him strongly, because two boys. Or do you know why George changed his name to the R-O spelling?
Hold it. There was another Rogoff in Kearney. They owned the two brothers, I believe, who owned the Roval Lumber Yard on Schuyler Avenue.
What lumber yard?
Roval, R-O-V-A-L.
Okay.
Lumber Yard in Kearney on Schuyler Avenue. And once in a while, they would stop by, and my father would say they're related to us, and their name was Rogoff. Now, one of those Rogoffs, a son of theirs, married and lives in Passaic near Rob's house on the same street on Amsterdam Avenue.
Hmm.
So there
Would you
was-
remember the names at all? The first names
No.
of the brothers?
No.
Okay.
They live on the same street, remember
Yeah,
Sylvia?
yeah.
Now, these two guys who opened the lumber, had the lumber yard there, they later became involved in two guys from Harrison. Did you ever hear two guys from
That was a
Harrison?
very big store.
Two guys from Harrison was
Sure.
a little electrical appliance store that started in Harrison, New Jersey, hence the name, Two Guys from Harrison. And later on, they had many, many large stores and became owners or executives at, what were the names? Vornado, which is a big real estate corporation today, Vornado. And they sold all these lumber franchises that they had in Two Guys from Harrison, which was a big chain. And
This kind of stuff.
in the end, what they did was to take all of their properties and go into the real estate business because they gave up. These stores are like, you know, what we call around here Target today, or, you know,
I remember them.
or,
Yeah.
oh, do you? Yeah.
But how might they be related to the Rogoffs or
Her
other?
name was Rogoff. They're related to my father, like a second cousin.
A
Did
distant
you know
cousin.
you were related to that?
No.
Maybe related. Okay.
Maybe, you're right.
Okay.
So there is a Rogoff on Amsterdam Avenue in Passaic, New Jersey.
I will definitely be pursuing that.
The Garden Spot of America.
Okay.
And we did mention it to them
Yeah,
once.
we had discussed it with them.
Yeah.
But you didn't get it to any conclusions?
I don't remember anything I discussed with them. I saw her, but just said, hey, I think we're related or something like that in some manner, because Rogoff was not a common name that I know of. So,
Okay.
She was so unhappy,
Yeah.
very unhappy. Lady. Feel bad now. Oh, take that thing off of me.
What thing?
That camera,
Oh, this thing.
this thing.